Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. Hello, magical women. In today's modern world, women are feeling numbed out and living dull, grey lives, lacking the radiance and joy they came here to fully express. They are disconnected from their bodies, feeling they've become hardened to life, burdened by forcing and pushing in a masculine feeling way. They long deeply for connection with their sisters, to heal their feminine wounding and reconnect their feminine wisdom and power. So, I've created the path for those magical women to learn to connect to their bodies, desires and pleasures, create in softer, nurturing, loving ways, become intimate with the cyclical wisdom of the feminine and reignite their magnetism. Beginning at the end of June, we will be guiding you on the path of reinitiating and reclaiming your feminine in Invoke Your Feminine Mystery. Find out more at www.nicolebarton.co.uk/feminine-mystery. In today's episode, I am excited to be exploring one of the Secret Witch's biggest challenges, the idea of having no time. I explore the struggles and fears she often experiences, along with how it's possible, if we stay open to magic and to creating life differently, to magic up time by living in the flow of the feminine and allowing ourselves to dream our lives into reality. In this episode, I explore what's possible as we begin to explore the polarity of creating from the feminine, how supported we can be as women by the masculine's provisions of structure, and how to create by invoking your sacred dream guides to not only begin to free up more time, but also to create from flow and ease. And the deeper invitation is to open your heart to all of this magic being possible, because usually the Secret Witch thinks it isn't. Let's dive in. Welcome, magical ones, to the show all about magicking time by creating life via and nightly dreams. This one is, a very exciting episode. So I'm going to dive in. I'm going to share a little bit before just about the concept of time and the Secret Witch and the wounds that she tends to have around this. Time is often one of the areas where shadow really shows up for the Secret Witch, and I know that because it's one of the areas that I have also struggled deeply myself. And often women will come to this path and one of their biggest objections is, I haven't got time walking this path. And I just firstly want to start by saying that you are so loved in that, if that is you, because I have so been there in kind of stuck in this kind of shadowy idea that we haven't got time. And yes, we live in a world where we often don't have time, in terms of like we're being busy, we're running around trying to fit everything in, and yet there is this way to create life which is very much from flow, from joy, from abundance, but it's very much the opposite of how we've been taught. And kind of coming into creation of life differently from the way of being like, well, I haven't got time, is it's just not going to work. We have to be open to being able to create in new ways and open our minds, our hearts to new ways of being. So First of all, as you're listening to this episode, that is the deep invitation, is to just begin to open your heart to the possibility that there may be a way of creating life that is kind of, yeah, in a much easier way to how we've created it so far. And yeah, so far, where you're likely at right now is kind of running around conforming to the idea of these time shadows. And it makes perfect sense. It's completely innocently created. For a start, our culture very much depends on, yeah, times and deadlines and all of that stuff. That's just how we've been taught. And yet, if we think about our ancestors, they didn't have that. But if we just kind of back to the witch wound, they also kind of had to begin to, this is when women began to learn that being in our full feminine self, in that kind of life of flow, wasn't acceptable. She was being burned at the stake for being in her feminine, and this was when things started to change, and we started to kind of have to begin to kind of accept the masculine kind of way of life and structure and form and all of that stuff became more and more important, and women were being burned for rejecting that. So, yeah, for a woman to live in her feminine, messy, glorious magic was, yeah, deeply risky back in the day. And yet, the thing we have to, that's kind of ingrained in ourselves, but the thing we have to realize is that that is no longer a threat. So, yeah, when we talk about time, the kind of feminine energy is more flowing in life. When we think about time, it feels like a very masculine energy, like structure, focus, control, that kind of lineality of life. And not that there's anything wrong with that. There is very much, we need that kind of masculine holding for us to be able to flow, and I'll speak a bit more to that. But magically, just before this episode, I had recently noticed a deep desire to rebrand my website. And I remember that was something that then came with this deep sense of like, oh, I just haven't got time with everything that I'm creating to do that. And so it just what there's magic that just kind of unfolded just before recording this, that I thought I'd open with, because it really illustrates quite well the kind of magic available in terms of how we create when we kind of let go of concepts of time. Not let go, but learn to kind of yeah, create alchemy around them so that it works for us. Because we're the ultimate message is that we are here to create our lives how we desire. So there may well be still some element of operating within time constraints. It's just that we can then choose into that more powerfully. So yeah, I just wanted to make that clear. But yeah, I had this deep desire that I noticed as part of my vision to rebrand my website, but I haven't, in my mind, I haven't got time. And yet, magic just kind of unfolded a possible new logo, which wasn't something traditionally I would have sat down, worked on that at my desk, and come up with this big plan. But what happened was, I sent a message to my partner, and it said, "I love you, my king." And he replied with this symbol. And this symbol was like a little rod with a snake wrapped around it. I was like, oh. And I just felt in my body there was this kind of deep activation from this symbol. So I told him about this. And I said, that's deeply activating. And he said, for a start, he was like, well, I don't know what you mean by that. Because, yeah, he's like, well, what does that mean? So I said, oh, the symbol, the rod with the snake, is kind of like the masculine and the feminine wrapped around it. And I knew that I was speaking to this in this episode, so that in itself was quite magical. But he just replied with, oh, that's the rod of, I can't even pronounce it, Asclepius. And I was like, cool, what's that? And he was like, it's the serpent entwined rod that's wielded by the god Asclepius. So this is the deity of healing and medicine. And I was like, oh my goodness, that is magical, because I don't know if you listened to the previous episode, but I realized recently that part of my medicine is healing and medicine. I described it as like me being this walking, activating homeopathic remedy, speaking truth that kind of ripples out as medicine into the world. So I was like, oh my goodness, no wonder that symbol was activating for me. And he was like, okay. But I was there in my feminine, like feeling, oh yes, this is activating, this is alive, this feels juicy, whilst also being like, well, why on earth did he send me that? But that's kind of the magic of it. And in that also, I think it really highlights, firstly, how the masculine can really hold this space for us to flow and create within. Because I was like, oh, this symbol could be really powerful for my new logo. It was like a line which could be turned into a W, and the snake kind of wrapped around it, which again could be like the S of the secret witch. But it also has this deeper meaning of me and who I am. And also in that, it really shows how the masculine can really deeply see us as women. So that was a perfect example, really. I know it's kind of not a lot to do with time in some ways, but it's also everything to do with time because I was thinking that I would have to sit down and hash out this rebrand. And magically, through kind of that kind of masculine feminine polarity, that deepening into the feminine work that I've done, that has now been revealed to me, which has saved me so much time in my creation and helped me to create in a completely new way. And this is how most of my life is being created these days. It's something that I've been in the deep work of. And it just shows you once you open up to that, to deepening into your feminine, then yeah, time becomes created in ways that you couldn't have even imagined. And this, yeah, the feminine works in very mysterious ways. It's not logical, it's not linear. And that example just really showed the kind of my capacity to take from his power as a woman. So that kind of feminine opening of expression of my love for him allowed me to then receive the power in his masculine seeing of me, his kind of presence with me and my gifts, and the power in his knowing, the kind of holding he provided to me to be able to create from that, and the activation I received from him and his masculinity. So there is a deep powerful presence, a deep, powerful holding, a deep, powerful knowing in the masculine. Often we will kind of rebel as secret witches against the masculine. But as I said to someone in my crucible the other day, when we are rebelling against the masculine, we are not able to receive the fullness of the masculine's provisions. So this is a great example of how where normally I would have been very much in my masculine myself, like really sitting, hashing out my rebrand at my desk. Instead, I have been fully expressed in my feminine essence of like, I love you, like you're fully expressing my love for him. And in that, magic has just been provided to me, which has created my rebrand for me without me even trying, other than setting my intention to have more revealed about my rebrand. And I don't know how much time is going to be before I rebrand, but it's definitely something that yeah, is being revealed to me. So yeah, beautiful example, like just provided by magic as to how we can magic time. Not necessarily on the topic of our nightly dreams, but I'll come to that, but just like how we can magic time where we didn't think that it was possible just by being more deeply in our feminine. And as a secret witch, we'll often kind of swing between these poles. Either kind of yeah doing it specifically in relation to time, either we'll do everything on time and we'll make sure that everything is perfectly lined up, very much kind of yeah in our masculine making things happen, or we will rebel against time, and usually that involves kind of completely rejecting time whatsoever and going more into the feminine, that kind of masculine, swinging from the masculine to the feminine, and not really just seeing that actually we're here to embody our soul, we're here to actually just be who we are. And yeah, again, it's not about rejecting that masculine holding of time. It's not about swinging from the pole from one pole to another. It's about us learning to, as women, be deeply in our feminine whilst being held by the masculine. There's a great example I remember seeing once, as a kind of metaphor. The masculine is almost like these riverbanks that hold this space for us to flow within. Like if we think of the feminine as the water flowing down the riverbanks, the masculine is almost the banks of the river, holding that space for us to be able to create. And that's what time offers us. At the end of the day, that's what time offers us. There's a real power in honoring time, and yet we can flow. So in terms of kind of carving out time for ourselves to flow within, that's a really powerful way. And this is what the invitation is into, with creating a container within our dream space, which is what I'm going to be speaking to in a little while. But yeah, just to give you that example of like the riverbanks, of having that container of time for us to flow within, is a way that we can really powerfully create by embracing the fullness of who we are, embracing our femininity as women, embracing our creative capacity. Um, yeah, so juicy stuff before we've even really fully got in. So that was just magical how that appeared to me before recording. Um, and yeah, and just to go back to my own experience with kind of time struggles, one of my biggest, deepest shadows is that of perfection. So I have been very much used to kind of the way of being where we're forcing things, we're burning out, we're creating to a schedule, we've got massive to-do lists. And that was really ultimately being in that way of being was kind of what led me to having chronic fatigue. I talked about how to heal chronic fatigue in the last solo episode that I did a few weeks back. And yeah, this kind of very much being in our masculine way of being, where we're a victim to time, I guess, is what created me to be very deeply ill with chronic fatigue several times in my life. And that may well be where you are now, because I always walk my women from where I was to where I am now. So yeah, it's likely that as a secret witch who doesn't know her power and magic specifically around time, as well as we're talking to it in this episode, that you'll be in that kind of forced burnout, creating to schedule, like having huge to-do lists and feeling in that very burnt out state, not in your feminine, the complete opposite. And again, it's innocently created that way. It's innocent. So there, if that is where you are, the invitation is to bring as much love as possible to all of that. And to begin to see that this is usually because we have some old beliefs, some that are kind of informing our way of being. Often these beliefs are around ideas of control, ideas of approval, ideas of security. These are kind of the three core shadows that in the witch that show up, that have us create what we don't want. And it kind of around time, I guess it feels like safe to know what's happening when. It feels better if we are approved of for hitting our deadlines. It feels like we're in control if we're on time for things. And so there is this constant compulsion to monitor, manage, control time so that we are safe, approved of, in control. So, the deep invitation is to be aware of this, to be conscious of the stories that your child has created around time. And to just, yeah, to bring as much love to any stories that get revealed around your relationship with time as we dive into this episode. And yeah, again, just without kind of seeing this deeper illumination around how we're being a victim, I guess, to time. Without that, we can't begin to create magic. So never underestimate the power of noticing. As we begin to make conscious our patterns, and maybe some of them are already being revealed in what I've introduced here, but without being able to notice and illuminate more, we don't have the capacity to change. So, whilst people will often be like, well, do I really just have to notice? Yes, you really do just have to notice to begin with, because that is one of the most powerful steps you can take. The noticing is what allows you to make it conscious and be able to choose again. So that is where magic starts to be created from that
kind of having the hope that magic is real and having the hope that we can begin to see some of the ways that we haven't been creating magically. And I talked about dreaming a little bit the other day. It struck me when I was creating the themes for this episode that we're talking about creating life via our nightly dreams. And so we're going to go deeper into that now. But just before I do, there's this kind of real, it really struck me that if we're talking about dreams, one of the core ways that the witch will create is through dreaming, through visioning, through allowing herself to dream, to kind of open her heart to having these bigger dreams, bigger visions of what she wants to create in life. And it struck me as well. I've been speaking to this in a mini series about the mysterious feminine archetypes of the witch in our Facebook group this month. We've been exploring and creating all around the feminine mystery. And I spoke to the energy of the maiden archetype, which is kind of the youthful, playful, dreamy, opening, ready to bloom phase of our lives. And one of the ways that shadow shows up with her is that she learns that it's not safe to dream. It's not safe to begin to dream her visions to life. And so she kind of creates these beliefs, often around approval, and shuts those down. And it just struck me as I was thinking about that kind of this dreaming is a pattern of how we create as witches. This kind of dreaming, and this is probably what makes creating life via our nightly dreams so powerful. I've not really seen that before recording this, so this is a really powerful thing for me to have seen as well. Um, and often kind of as we shut down those dreams is when we begin to fall more into unconsciously just being this victim to time, being this like we shut down the kind of creative, fully expressed lover, the kind of nurturing mother, the wise woman, the queen, all of these kind of feminine archetypes that we can harness power from. We shut down kind of the growth and expansion through each of those phases just simply by closing our hearts to our dreams. So, creating life from our dreams, from our nightly dreams, is really, really going to be powerful work for you as well. And I'd never seen that link before, even though I probably had somewhere, but it just seems really crystal clear to me now. Um, and of course, the thing is, when we're in these shadow fears around creating extra time or not having enough time, everything can look true from shadow. And yet, Creatrix, we're just running I'm leading the Creatrix Invoke Your Creatrix program at the moment, this Crucible, with a gorgeous bunch of women. And there's the thing about that is that there's this new way to create. So often we can really feel compelled by our shadows, by our fears, and yet, and everything can really look true in that, but yet Creatrix knows that there's a way to hold the tension of that looking true, and there's a new way to create. And so, my own initiation out of the masculine way of being, because I very much lived in hustle, force, push, not enough time. It's actually kind of such a core strength of mine how devoted I am to how much I kind of push things and how I'll do anything that feels aligned. And yet, because I have this trait, it's also my deepest work to soften into the feminine, to relax, to open, to soften, to express from flow and natural truth. And so, time has felt like a deep burden to me. It's felt like something that was really difficult to let go of, the kind of compelled need to monitor time to make sure I'm getting everything done on time. And one day I said to my own soul guide that I hadn't got time, and she replied as she normally would in a very triggering way that was kind of like, you can either stay a victim to this, there's always going to be something that you've not got time for, or you can realize that you choose everything, including not being a victim to time. And I was like, okay, fine. So I began to choose how I used my time, but there was something deeper available. And I remember saying to her, I'm choosing how I spend my time. I'm creating more from the feminine. I'm letting go of hustle. choosing to go for walks when it feels really, really compelling to sit down at my desk and write, particularly in relation to my group crucibles, which I was creating in a very masculine way, right at the start when I started to begin this, and now I've managed to liberate that. But there was still this temptation to, yeah, lean into creating it in a masculine way. So I've chosen to like create that through both my night self and going for walks. And yeah, I was at the time I was speaking to my soul guide and I said, I'm still struggling with being overwhelmed. And she said, of course, the most frustrating answer I've ever heard, which is you're being available for having no time and being overwhelmed. And she accepts very little victim. So I was like, what do I do with that? And yeah, I had absolutely no idea. But what I did know was that in my experience, any kind of devotion that we make to being unavailable for having no time, um, kind of really choosing to be unavailable for having no time, um, would open up the how. And so that is what I did. I chose to be only available for, yeah, creation from the feminine, um, because that feels a more juicy and fulfilling way of saying I'm unavailable for having no time. And yeah, of course, that is something I'm still in the work of. I'm still having more and more revealed about that. But what I can say is that having me deepen into it is having me deepen into more feminine ways of creating, and I have new ideas of how more time can be magically freed up, and or magically time is just being freed up, a bit like the example with the rebrand that I shared earlier. I think these things are being revealed in my deeper devotion to creating from the feminine. And I generate this, and other examples is I generate a huge amount of content which is then now used by my team in all sorts of innovative ways. So this is a way that I have been able to save time. There would have been a time where I'd have sat at my desk and written 5 different pieces of content. And now I write things once and then it's used in innovative ways by my team. So that's one way that we have managed magicked time. Or again, I gave the example of how I will create my crucibles by going on a wild wander and speaking to the wild, letting myself receive what it wants to reveal as the teaching, rather than sitting at my desk and hashing out from logic, like this is what I'm going to teach. All of these things are saving time and being more feminine ways to create. And the lesson in that really is that we can create whatever we desire. We just have to devote to it. Or if you're not at the stage of being able to devote to it, to just begin to live in hope and possibility and openness that there may be this other way to create life. And as we deepen into that hope and possibility, it turns into belief, it turns into devotion, and being able to become unavailable for anything less and hold that tension of the unknown. And yeah, that is really the deep invitation here is to, if you are sitting there thinking, "Oh, I just don't know if this is possible," the invitation is to open your heart to be able to live in hope. And yeah, another way that became one of my favorite ways to create more time or magic time was through invoking my sacred dream guides. So this is kind of how we create life through nightly dreams. So I thought that I would invite you into this ritual today, which is yeah, so magical and powerful. And yeah, just to speak to like why this is so powerful. We often feel as secret witches that we have very little time. And the deeper invitation here is to being called, following that call to creating in new ways. And one of these ways can be by calling in our sacred dream guides. So witch queens, which is this is the path of the witch queen. They call in spirit, they call in guidance, they call in healing and expansion through their dreams as a powerful way of embodying who they came here to be. And this is something that my own soul guide guided me into that has been so powerful that I just really wanted to share this as a kind of ritual that you can begin to do to get support in your creation with whatever it is, or with whatever you desire. And so there's a few different phases to this. There's kind of the preparation for it. There is kind of offering a deep appreciation for what you're already creating. There's intention setting, and there's like writing down all the details of the dream and then revealing the meaning of it. So really the way to begin is thinking of it as a kind of an embodiment practice, and a ritual to call in your sacred dream guides. And so we can begin by some sort of embodiment that will really kind of drop you fully into your body. So this could be something like dancing, it could be massage before you go to bed, it could be anything that kind of brings you and your presence into your body, so that you're kind of dropped into your being. So once you are kind of in your body, and again, go into your body with intention, the intention of maybe embodying your creatrix. This is something that my women are in the work of in the creatrix crucible. So you may not have a sense, unless you're in that crucible, of who the creatrix is, but I guess on a very basic level you can think of it as your, like, the powerful part of you that knows how to create. There's kind of these, if you set that intention, or just really like feel into your body. And then once you've done that, go to bed as usual and close your eyes. And then I'm going to share with you some steps to call in these guides. Um, and it's helpful if you have a pen near to you, in case there's something that you want to jot down as well. But when you first go to bed, the invitation is to begin by just spending some time thanking your guides for things that you've already created in your life, whether that's spirit, whether it's particular guides. It's just really calling them in, but with this deep appreciation. And it doesn't have to be this long list of everything that you've ever created, but things that are really present for you as you begin this ritual. That might be that you're deeply appreciative of your loving family. It might be that you're deeply appreciative of the space you created for yourself to do this tonight. And once you've finished doing that, the next part is to really begin to let your dream guides know what you desire guidance on, whether you want to create something, whether you want to heal something whilst you're asleep. And this is, of course, we're basically magicking up 12 hours where you would normally be completely unconscious. And we're inviting our soul guides to be able to support us in creation or healing or whatever it is that you want support on. This is a whole 12 hours that you are going to magic time. Which, if you think about it, I mean, that's like 12 hours is a long time. No, actually, it's probably not 12, probably more like 8, but it could be 12, depending on how much you want to sleep. Um, so, yeah, think about things like, what do you desire guidance on? What is your kind of deep heart's longings to call in support for what you want to create? Or maybe what do you desire to be integrated, healed, or have resolved? And you might ask your sacred dream guides to provide you with dreams that will illuminate things to you, to be able to reveal things to you that you'll be able to, yeah, recall. So specifically request that you are able to recall these dreams clearly. And again, it might be that you want to have more revealed about your vision. That might be one of the intentions. The point is to get really intentional about what you would like to create in this 8 hours of sleep. And yeah, ask them to provide guidance on what will support you in creating it. and anything else that you might need for healing, or yeah, whatever your intention is. And again, this can be a very ritualistic kind of asking of what you need and being really specific. And then you can complete this phase by going to sleep. And then, as soon as possible, when you wake up, in the morning, the intention is then to take out your journal. This is why we took it to bed with us. So grab your journal, write everything that you can remember from that dream down, all the details, along with any feelings, emotions, sensations that came up within that dream. So this is again like a real deep invitation to capturing all the details, whether that's symbols, whether that's colours, what happened. And it's okay when you start if there are any small elements remembered. It may be that you don't remember any of it, and that's absolutely fine. So meet yourself wherever you are and love yourself in that. There can be deeper fears that are stopping you from accessing the dreams at first. But yeah, this is just an invitation into meeting yourself wherever you are at with this. And then the invitation next is to spend some time allowing yourself to reveal what the symbolisms were, what the dreams signified to you. This is kind of a processing, a revealing of the deeper meaning. So, yeah, what did they mean to you? What guidance was provided? What next aligned actions were provided? What messages were being shared? What do you actually need to know that the dream was trying to tell you? Yeah, what showed up? What was there to be processed? And this isn't again like an intellectual knowing from logic, but it's kind of an intuitive, heart-led practice. So allow more to be revealed rather than kind of grabbing some kind of dream interpretation book or going to Google it. Just allow yourself to be with the question, what is being revealed through this dream? And the more you do that, the easier it will become. So yeah, that really is the ritual that we can begin to practice, that you can begin to play with to magic time. And as you do, more and more stuff will be revealed. This is the way, again, that I create all of my stuff these days. So I'd actually really love to have a guest on to speak about dream interpretation, by the way, because that feels, yes, such a magical subject. So this episode isn't going to speak to that, but it is speaking to the power in this ritual. And as I said, we dream when we are asleep, and yet the invitation as a witch is to create from our dreams. So this is such a powerful practice for a witch specifically. It's powerful practice for anyone medicinal, but for a witch, this is like really crucial in how we can create, and it creates so much more time, offers us so much more time to create life from. Um, so yeah, what I have created from this is entire programs. All my circles are created this way, solutions to challenges. Even the Secret Witch show came from a dream, and this was back before I was even consciously harnessing this through this kind of powerful ritual. Um, so yeah, I dreamed and visioned the witch and the Grim Reaper visited me. I've mentioned this before. And the symbolism of that was what really informed the deep work that we do here, to be all about creating death to old ways of being. And that is really what we're doing. I was quite scared when I had the Grim Reaper visit me. It's not really something that you want to receive in your nightly dreams. So again, if something that seems dark comes to you, look for the symbolism in it. Don't be frightened of what will appear. So I'm actually really glad that I mentioned that example, because often we can have nightmares. And again, there's often deep gold, deep symbolism within those that can mean something that is really valuable to see. It's not necessarily like you can have that real horrible sensation, but there's always some gold within it. So yeah, for me, the Grim Reaper was all about creating death to old ways of being. I help women liberate these patterns that help them become who their soul came here to be. And I remember an example from Creatrix, was how I had a dream one day talking about kind of nightmares as part of my creation for the week's teaching. So I was doing a teaching circle in Creatrix. Was that I had this dream about my ex-husband getting married and me finding out that he didn't want to. And I was talking to him, and I got this was back in 2021, and I got 2021 written across my left cheek in bright red lip liner. And I woke up thinking, I have no idea what that means. And then after being with it for a while, I thought, actually, there's a deeper meaning here that because this is my ex-husband, is that he was kind of still stuck not living a soulful life, but that I had deepened into soul despite the discomfort. And 2021 was the year that I deepened even further into my feminine to begin to receive my desires. So that taught me that I was there that week to teach desire. And so traditionally, week 3 of Creatrix became about desire because this was the meaning that was revealed to me by spirit, by my guides, and also by the wild. There were other ways that this presented itself. I often will take it to my dream self, but I also take it to my wild self to have more revealed. Um, so yeah, there's such magic as we begin to deepen into our dreams, and yeah, there's so much doubt that this can be possible in the Secret Witch, and yet I know that because I've also been there in that doubt, and yet it is the way that I have managed to create what my heart's desires are. So we can create all of life this way, and whilst it can seem so counterintuitive to not just sit there kind of hashing things out, sitting at our desks, like forcing, pushing, yeah, it saves so much time. And we think that we have to be in control, managing every second of every day. And this is really how I created before, but it's also how I burned out. And there is another way, and it may seem dreamy because it is, and that may not feel acceptable to your maiden, to the young part of you who learned that creating from her dreams and creating her dreams was not safe, was not approved of. And so if there is some resistance, that makes perfect sense there. And yet this is how magic is done. So the place that I'm going to leave you is to just begin to illuminate what resistance is coming up for you in the idea of creating this way, in this idea of this ritual of, yeah, magicking an extra 8 hours of creation time via nightly dreams. What is the resistance that bubbles up as you do that? And you may wish to spend some time with that inquiry. Um, and yeah, you may wish to pause and spend some time with that inquiry about what is the resistance that you have to creating in this different way. And it's quite a radically different way of creating. There may be a resistance of like, well, how do I make sense of my dreams? Or how is this possible to really, does it really work? And again, as I say, when you're new to it, it may be that you try it a few times and nothing comes through, nothing is revealed, you block it out. And that's often because this new way of creating, if you're new to it, it can be quite different. It can be quite scary. There's a lot of fear, and so often fear will shut down. But again, just be with what is the fear, what is the resistance to creating this way, and see what is revealed. It's kind of like what are the costs and benefits of creating this way. What are the costs and benefits if magic is really this real? Often that's a great inquiry that I will offer to my women, is that kind of, yeah, and that inquiry of like, what are the costs and benefits of believing that this is possible? Because many secret witches will doubt the possibility of magic being real. One of my deepest fears before I walked the path of soul was that I would be taken advantage of. And I'd experienced coaches where I had felt deeply taken advantage of. I hadn't created what I wanted to create with them. And the reason for that is because their paths didn't have the deep integration of soul work, that is, the shadow work that is within this path. And so I've come to see that this path of magic, this path of soul, this kind of shadow work, this deep integration is the only thing that has ever made a really lasting, true difference. But I do deeply remember, because of the kind of previous paths that I'd walked that hadn't worked, feeling as if it was a scam, feeling as if, well, it can't really be that easy, that magical, that, just learning to create from our dreams. That sounds ridiculous. I remember feeling that. I remember feeling that sense of it being a scam, that kind of mistrust. And I actually remember telling my own soul guide that I thought that she was just a scam artist, so which she absolutely thought I was hilarious, but also really appreciated my truth. It's part of how we came to see that my medicine was truth, because yeah, there was this deep fear that I was being scammed. And I see that in my own women, my own clients, that kind of sense of like a mistrust that we have to often work through. And I remember the sense of like just seeing my own guide just kind of flouncing around, dreaming her life, smelling her roses. And I just used to think, that's so, and like it seems so impossible. And yet I chose to believe in hope. I chose to believe in possibility. And really, for me, it was like, well, what's the alternative? I can either stay where I am, or I can open my heart and see that this woman is creating the life that I want. And that's again the same for my women. They will often be in the same position, like seeing that I am creating in feminine ways, being quite triggered by that sometimes. To see like the idea of me just creating life through dreaming can seem quite radical, quite triggering to some women. Like we're literally kind of creating the life of our dreams, and it looks like we're being really lazy, really, yeah, really undeserving in some ways of. There's the shadowy sense in the Secret Witch where it can't be that easy. Like how can that be possible? Like you look really lazy just bathing in rose petals all day long. And yet, until I learned to create that way myself, yeah, I definitely felt the exact same shadow fears. And yet, it's in the only way that I've ever really created my true desires, the kind of solar business that I longed for, the house, the home that I longed for, my deep relationships, the connection that I longed for. And I'm still in the work of all that. And yeah, this is very much the same. I see witness to my clients creating this way as well. And they also are in the work of invoking their night self. So yeah, it works, and creating this way really does offer us real magic, and the very proof that magic is real. Um, but it takes choosing it, and it takes choosing it even when the possibility, even when we're just living in possibility and hope rather than knowing. And it isn't easy. So, yeah, living from the feminine is messy, it's flowing, it's kind of spiral rather than linear. This requires us to tend the deep fears of choosing a different way to be, the fears of control, approval, and security. So, yeah. Um, all of those need to be liberated and illuminated firstly and loved. And that is not easy to choose, but it is so worth it. So worth it. And I'm just wondering, I'm just about to complete actually, but I feel like I can hear a bee. I can't see where it is. So yeah, very appropriate when we're talking about the masculine and the feminine, thinking about the bee and how it penetrates the feminine. So yeah, yeah. Mm, well, I'm off to find a bee. But yeah. So anyway, I will leave it there. And yeah, deep love for you all. If there is anything that I can be of support with, for further guidance on this, do let me know. And I would love to hear what comes up for you in your dreams as you are creating in this way. So if you give it a go and you want to share, then please do join us in the Secret Witch Circle in Facebook, on our Facebook group. That is a beautiful community of sisters that we are creating at the moment. And yeah, it's something that is very deep to, yeah, deep in my heart to create is this sisterhood, and more has been revealed to me on that as well this week, by my own sovereign circle of sisters. This is such a powerful space as we talk to the kind of deep integration of shadow not being available in many other paths, not being available in many other places. So we are, yeah, just holding this loving, powerful space. So if you are feeling called to join us, if you want to share your experience of creating more time with your night self, I would love for you to join us there. And let us know. Share your heart, open your hearts. There's such a magical power in being witnessed by your sisters. So I would love for you to join us. And of course, keep listening, keep playing, keep exploring, keep expanding. And yeah, all the love. Happy dreaming.
Wow, I loved that the bee showed up at the end of this episode, because after recording, I realised that the bee literally represents hard work and being a busy bee, which is usually exactly where the Secret Witch creates from. And the invitation is into deepening into creation from soul. It just shows you how magical life really is when we open to it, that a bee just synchronistically arrived to say hello at the end. My takeaways are: time is a linear constraint created by us that we are conditioned into, and it's one not to bypass, but it's also something that we don't have to be in victim to. Time is particularly something that Secret Witch struggles with, as there are deep witch wounds around giving up her power to comply with the masculine structure, focus, and control that time represents. She'd have been burned at the stake for being in her feminine, messy, non-linear magic, and yet that's no longer a real threat. The feminine works in mysterious ways, and when we aren't embracing of those, we will swing from being in the masculine to avoiding being in the masculine. None of these are embodying the feminine. These are both shadowy ways of operating in the world. The deeper invitation is to embody the feminine in her flow, supported by the structure and support that the masculine provides, including creating time for ourselves to flow. We can create pockets of time in the most unlikely places, including a space for the feminine to flow at night in our dreams by invoking our sacred dream self. And I shared a ritual for this to help you intentionally create via dreaming. We often have resistance to dreaming because we've rejected parts of our feminine selves in maidenhood when we learned that dreaming was not approved of. So illuminating your resistance to this is a great inquiry to be in to begin with. Where do you shut down your dreaming? My women often will also have deep fears that magic is a scam, which also need tending so that they can open to possibility. Which part of you doubts the magic of your dream self? And will you choose to open your heart to a new way, or choose to continue to stay as you are? If you'd like to get the show notes and links for everything we've chatted about in this episode, head to www.secretwitch.co.uk. If you know a secret witch who would love this episode, please share with them to help them liberate themselves. And so you don't miss out on next week's episode, head to your podcast app of choice and hit subscribe. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.